Thank you so much for joining us here on the Voice of Job Seekers. This is Mark, and I am your host, as always, hoping that you'll be one of the three people that we usually talk about, and actually four. We actually talk about the employed and unemployed, the underemployed, and, of course, those who are underappreciated and want to move on with their lives and the job. So hopefully this will meet your need, and welcome back to the show this week. I just happened to get a call from Margot Wickersham, who I'm connected with on all the social networks. And she needed a guest for a show. The guest that she had, she'll mention the name during the recording that you hear. But I thought for the last episode of the summer that you would like to hear this interview that I had with Margot Wickersham. And she is somebody that's been executive in marketing for a number of years, and also has been in high-level management for marketing and with certain companies. I think one of the companies she's been with was Dell. So she really knows what she's talking about as far as business is concerned. Nevertheless, she shares some of her experience, but really this interview, one of the few times you hear me say it's about me, and actually I'm actually giving advice about getting that external referral. A lot of it's from the people that you don't know, and I have included some strategies in there, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. In the meantime, again, this is the last episode of the summer. Hopefully you'll enjoy your summer like I have been. It's been a great summer for me in a lot of different ways. But just going to take some time off from recording to do some other business things, including exploring the different options I have to add some new shiny things to the blog. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, I definitely will be writing and publishing articles there at thevoiceofjobseekers.com. You can always call me at 708-365-9822, or you can email me at mark@thevoiceofjobseekers.com. In the meantime, I probably won't add an ending to it, to the interview. What you hear is pretty much it. It's about an hour long, so it's a lot of great information. Margot definitely works with some career clients as well as small business clients. And hopefully you'll go to the voiceofjobseekers.com to read the show notes and what I have written there about her. But I hope you enjoy this, and thank you very much for being a part of the Voice of Job Seekers. Of course, back on September 6th. Then we'll have a steady stream of new episodes, new content, and more great advice that you'll hear from guests. Got another boatload of new guests that are coming up. So I'm really looking forward for you to hear these voices. In the meantime, here's the interview with me being interviewed as Margot kind of guides us along the way. Thanks a lot. And again, have a great summer. Enjoy the interview.
Ready to go? Okay. Welcome. All right. Well, we are really lucky to have Mark Anthony Dyson with us today. He's the founder and the award-winning podcaster of the blog The Voice of Job Seekers. The website is thevoiceofjobseekers.com. He is a career consultant and a career advice writer, and has contributed to sites you've heard of, such as U-Turn, Recruiter, Come Recommended, and several others. He's also had his career advice published on Monster, Fortune Magazine, Business Insider, and U.S. News and World Report. Mark, you should really try to get on some magazines and newspapers that people have heard of. I think that'd make it better for your business. No, that's awesome. Those are awesome, big scores to be able to do that. So we were scheduled to have Hannah Morgan and The problem is that she's out finding Pokemon and she couldn't pull herself away, so she was not able to join us. And you graciously have jumped in. So really glad to have you here. And I look forward to getting to know you a little bit more and hearing more about what you have for sharing with people on how to go get that job. It's just a lot of opportunities and a lot of different ways to get information and insights on how to do a job hunt, but it's also challenging to know how to start. Where do you start? There's almost so much that it's hard to know where to start. So I am hoping that you can share with us some specifics and tactics for viewers on where to get started. And in particular, I think people know intrinsically that who you know is very, very helpful. You need to have skills too. If you don't have skills, then who you know is not going to help you. You'll just have a lot of people to talk to and no job. But if you have some skills in your job hunting, then finding a way to get known and be on the tip of the tongue of people who are hiring or thinking of hiring is a great goal, and it can be tricky. So if you don't have a fabulous, what we used to call a Rolodex in the old days, a list of contacts, then how do you start building up your referral base? And so with that, I'm going to kick it off to you and let you give us some of your best insights on that.
Well, I think there are a couple of things I could just follow up on with what you've already shared. Everyone has skills. It's hard to be an adult not to have some type of skills, no matter what it is. Even if you are able to sit and watch, if you were like a certified nurse assistant and you had to sit and watch patients while they get processed and or if they were mentally ill, there's some skills there. You have to be patient.
True.
You have to be somewhat courageous to sit with somebody that you don't know what their next move or what they're thinking. So everybody's got some kind of skills, no matter what type of pay you received. Sometimes people just don't know how to turn that into a better skill set or one that pays a little bit more. But ultimately, all that to lead to being around people that you're like-minded. As much as you possibly can, and keeping your network warm. I mean, these days, I understand people get laid off, things that happen, then you got to try to call in some favors, call the people you know. That's understandable. But there's some times when people intentionally will leave a job, but instead of talking to friends and family first, which is still your network, they want to go apply to a job board because they're afraid to let their friends and family know. And really, these days, everybody's going to be understanding, because I think back when, and maybe I'm aging myself, not particularly you, but you know that
I'm very young.
But really, you know, if you lose your job, you're kind of expected to, you know, people want to know why, and especially your parents and then your siblings, and then, you know, you're kind of, you know, pressured to get the next job, whether you like it or not. It's sort of what we talked about earlier on the phone, how, you know, we used to work jobs and who cares whether you like it or not, you're gainfully employed. Well, you know, that doesn't particularly work anymore. And you know, and the employer wants your engagement as much as anyone else. They now want you to be involved. They want you now to invest ideas. So all of that to say that you want to be in that setting and set your network up in that setting, so that when it's time to look, or better yet, even when it's time to start to find out what your industry trends are, what people are doing great, how people are standing out, before you even need to look, you should be able to have those contacts ready to go, so that when it's time to go, you can get a better basis for having a referral.
That's a really good point. The basis of a good referral network is not something you get overnight. You don't subscribe to an app and then you add all these valuable people to your network. That's not how it works. There are a lot of tools that you can use to build and extend the network. But ultimately, it is all about building and nurturing relationships. And there's various levels. You know, there are people you're really close with and you have a very deep relationship with. And then there's people, you know, on just a superficial level. There's people you know through other non-professional contacts. If you have children, then maybe you know them through scouts or, the sports or the school or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And building those relationships is something I think that we all benefit from as we continue to do it over time, and not from a how can I use you later in life perspective only, but really it's just like life is better when you have great contacts and positive relationships with whoever you come into contact with. And if they're negative, then you just move on. But
Right.
you never know when you're going to be in a position to help them or they're going to be in a position to help you. And that is just all part of building a community. And we're human beings. We're designed to be parts of members of communities, and that we garner respect. We take care of each other. We do things when we can, and you don't know. So I used to think of it this way. I grew up on the St. Johns River in
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville, Florida. We were always out on our boat that had an Evinrude outboard motor. And this is before boats were really nice.
Right. Yeah.
And anyway, we were always water skiing and out there enjoying ourselves. And I remember that boats would break down and somebody would tow you back to wherever you needed to be. And that would
Mm-hmm.
take a long time because you have to tow slowly.
Right.
And my thought was, I noticed as a kid that if we got towed by somebody, then a year later, if we were towing someone who was broken down on the water, it wasn't the same people. You pay it forward, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know where that's going to pay off.
Right.
And that's the same approach I think that good networking takes, so that you've got things in place so that when you have a need, you have some people to call. It's not an overnight thing. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And I think that everything has context. And you have to
Yes.
think in the terms of, well, it's not a matter of me, but you're adding, there's a value exchange
Right.
along the way.
Right.
And I think people are acutely aware of that. If I'm getting, I need to also give. And it's better to come from the place where it's the overflow of the heart rather than putting it
Right.
on like a shirt or a hat. But
I so
there's a
agree.
if it's the overflow of the heart, then it makes it that much easier. Who's counting who referred
Right.
who last or who's giving who's last? So nobody cares about
That's
that.
right.
But what they care is that first thing is, are you okay, and what can I do for you, rather than what
That's
have you
right.
done for me lately?
Exactly. That is a shift without dating anybody, nobody,
Right?
not even
Eh,
taking
no,
a
no,
decade.
no. We won't do that.
Um, I am, I don't know about you, but delighted to live in an era where it shifted towards, yeah, like what you do, like the people you work with. That is such a massive improvement.
Hmm.
And pay it forward and be part of a community and think about the bigger picture. And I just wrote it down because I love the term overflow of the heart. That's a really nice term. And it just so happens that I love that doing the right thing ends up being good for everybody,
Yeah.
selves included. So,
Right.
so having a long view of building the relationships and the network will give you the opportunity to build that network so that when you do need the referral network, it's in place. So it's something you start and you nurture. What I hear you saying is it's something that you build over time. And
Hmm.
I think that people who are genuine and authentic know how to look and see how can I help you and take time. And sometimes it's such a little thing that you can do. You can put in a good word. You can make a recommendation. You can say, I really like your product or whatever it is. There's things that we can do to help others that just taking a couple of minutes can make a big difference. And if you put goodness out there, then you're going to eventually get goodness back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah, it's kind of hard because for a lot of people, it takes a lot of work, especially if you got to do the crash course version of trying to get a
yeah,
referral and try to network.
right,
But the whole idea again
right,
is that you need to be plugged in more than
right.
unplugged. And so,
That's right.
yeah, I believe that's going to take you a much longer way, all in all.
Hmm.
So that kind of gives us a context to some of the strategies and things that we talked about. Is that
Right,
it's not just about plugging in when it's time to charge the batteries. It's keeping it plugged in so that you have
Right.
the battery going while you're doing it. So,
All the time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, having said that, I think some of the things that we need to point out as well before we get into the real deep nook and crannies of referral strategies is that one is that there's a mindset, and there's also the fact that there are benefits as well. When
Hmm.
we talk about getting a referral, one
Hmm.
is you get to jump the shark, and instead of relying on a job board, which results and feedback can take weeks and sometimes months, and sometimes, well, I should say most of the time, not at all. Uh,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, really, you talk about if you're applying to a job board, you, there's a 10% chance that you might get seen by human eyes or hands. If we're generous by saying 15%, there are people out there that do promise that you can get through because they have keyword strategies. And I think those strategies are very valid because they've been tested and true. But at the same time, most will say jump the shark, get a referral, and the referral, of course, is going to be by somebody that's going to be more than likely familiar with you and your skill set and all that. So I think that part's very important. And
Yeah.
the ATS, for the fact that you can also be automatically included with the highly qualified candidates who've already gone through the process.
Right.
That's a plus, even if they might be 90% qualified and you're 75% qualified. You get to get in front of somebody to interview, more than likely.
R- Right. That's right. That's a really good point. I love the mindset part of things. It and the long view of having the bigger picture approach of how can we all help each other, and be kind of on the constant how can
Mm-hmm.
I build my community approach
Right.
mindset. I love that, and I actually have a personal example of how that worked in
Yeah,
my
please.
favor.
Love to hear it.
Um, so the Great Recession, 2009. It's the absolute depths of it's the worst economy of our lifetime, and I found myself looking for a job to support my family with my two kids after 10 years of staying at home to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, work with I was working with children, so it was tough because I'd had a good career run at Dell and a few other places, but it was a decade old. So
Mm-hmm.
I was basically starting over, and I'd let all my contacts go because I thought I'm not going to be back in this world again. There was no reason for me to be motivated to hang on to it. But fortunately, somebody invented LinkedIn, and there was a way to reconnect with people I
Right.
had worked with before. That was never available before. That changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to connect with. I just cranked up the engine. I dusted everything off, and I started looking for people. If I had an email address for them, then I reached out to them to connect. And at any rate, I found myself job hunting. I saw an ad for a position I wanted to apply for as a marketing position with a software company.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I was doing the same thing you're talking about. I was just one in a sea of many resumes. How do you stand out when you're thinking to yourself, Margot, it's been a while since you've worked. You may not be the best looking resume in the stack. How do I get heard? And I thought, well, let's see. If I knew somebody there, that would be helpful. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. Let me do a search on LinkedIn for anybody who ever has or still works at this company. And I did a search. I couldn't believe it. I found somebody I knew, and I knew her not in the context of professional work, but in the context of parenting. We were Girl Scout mothers together. And we had talked about going through some things we'd both gone through, but it didn't have anything to do with work. I didn't know what she did. I knew she had a career. Well, it turns out she was sort of a big shot at this company in a totally different division. And
Mm-hmm.
while she didn't know me professionally, she did know my character. So she was able to and willing to walk my resume over to the hiring manager and say, I've never worked with this woman, but I know she's hungry and I know she's honest. And that got me the interview. I got a
Mm-hmm.
call to go in and give it my best shot because I was able to find that connection. So
Yeah.
that wasn't even a close connection. It wasn't a former boss or a former colleague. It wasn't a close professional. It was a non-professional connection, as a matter of fact. But it was enough to
Yeah.
get me a foot in the door. And
Right.
that was enough.
Right. Now, I can pick that story apart and tell you what the key factors are just by having listened to it, even though we talked about it a bit earlier. But I could tell you, familiarity does mean a lot. I mean,
It does.
it
It does.
warms up your contact. The more people are more likely to accept and carry forward what you're asking, rather
Right.
than than somebody who they don't know. And there's also the
Right.
trust factor. The person that was referring you was a well trusted person. So that they're
Right.
going, people kind of align you with the people who you're like and who you bring to the table. So they're saying, well,
Right.
if she's awesome, I bet you Margot's awesome. And
Right.
so, therefore, you not only get to get in front of the interviewer, but I bet you I put more than 2 cents on it. But I bet that it turned out to be more of a conversation than it was an interrogation because they were more interested
Right.
in you rather than interested in your skills at first.
Right. That's an excellent point. And what you're talking about is branding by association.
Hmm.
And with a background in marketing and advertising, you look back on all the examples of, celebrities who are associated with a brand because they want you to like them because you like the celebrity. If that
Right.
didn't work, we wouldn't see Matthew McConaughey driving a Lincoln,
Right. Right.
doing his little fingers like this or whatever
Hmm. Right.
he does. So branding by association also works for us individually and professionally. So that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Just so happened that she was highly regarded. I got fortunate that way. But if I had been a not good person, if I'd been a gossipy, mean girl, kind of parent at the camp out, I wouldn't have had any cachet
Right.
to ask her for a favor. She would have maybe walked it over, but she wouldn't have given me she would not have said anything positive about me. She would have just said, I know this person. Maybe
Hmm.
she would have done that. Maybe she would have forwarded it in an email. So that's kind of back to the what's your character, behave well, have good character,
Right.
and, better
Right.
things flow as a result of that. So it's a really good point about that.
Well, presentation too has a lot to do with it. You had the right
Mm-hmm.
presentation that resonated with her. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a term that you used. I think in while we were talking, that she said something about you. Um, I think she said that your words were, I think you were hungry. Was that the
Mm-hmm.
term that she used
That,
for
yeah,
you?
she said, I've never worked with her, but I know she's hungry.
Yes, yes. But you gave people a sense of that, and you gave her a sense of that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of
Right.
that to say that with most people who are kind of afraid to ask or feel like they're imposed, look me straight in the eye, if you will.
Right.
There's going to be some disruption that will need to take place in
Yeah.
somebody's day or in somebody's process, but there's going to be some type of, you're going to do something, if you do it right, that's going to be positively memorable. And that's what, Margaret, you did. You did something that was positively memorable. So therefore, you got great results. I think where people fail is that the presentation, uh, coming off desperate, coming off entitled,
Right.
coming off
Mm,
or lacking the confidence. And
right.
not to say that too, that's important. A tribute that's really important to have is to have that courage to be able
Right.
to reach out that way because it is
Right.
scary.
Oh yeah.
It is scary. But once you understand your purpose and you're focused in more on giving than taking, you can diffuse that bomb before it goes off, and that can make your referral chances even greater if you're looking front and not the back. Oh, you give me
That's
claps.
right.
Yeah.
I'm giving you guys. No, absolutely. That's such a good point. And I love the phrase "character is what you do when no one's looking."
Yes.
And while she was looking, I was doing something that showed my character. I didn't even know I was going to need her professional help. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea that I would need that one day. And so if I'd been a jerk, then that would not have paid out nicely for me. It just doesn't pay to be a jerk
No,
in general.
no.
So part of getting referred is being an upstanding citizen.
Yes.
Because if you go around doing the mostly the right thing or attempting to anyway, then people will think more highly of you and be a lot more willing to refer you.
Yes,
So I think that's a
absolutely.
really, really good point. Really good point.
Well, I think your story
So
was
one of the
great in that sense. Your story was
thank
an
you.
excellent example of, again, walking through it again. You understand that the relationship to people is the key to unlocking a lot of what we
Right.
talk about here. And
Right.
really, if you're focused on building relationship, because it's not just, one and done, you get the referral and you're done, or that you get the contact
Exactly.
and done, you got to think, okay, show some gratitude here.
Yes. Yes.
At least, if not in paying it back, but in paying it forward. And
That's exactly right.
I think that's something that people tend to forget too, because we're moving so fast, and we're
Yeah.
forgetting about the connection that we just made. It was pretty meaningful because you got an interview. How else would have you gotten it?
Right. Right. That's exactly right. It's exactly right. As a matter of fact, I did. Um, I gave her a gift basket once I got the job,
Awesome.
and so thank you for the introduction and paving the way because I got the job, and that led me to spring my career, my third career forward, and at a time when I really really needed it. So
Right.
so it's gratitude is really important. Well, it's important personally.
Hmm.
If you approach life with the outlook of gratitude, then things are better anyway. But when people help you, it is a good idea to be grateful and to let them know that because it makes people feel good. We love to help as
Sure.
human beings,
Sure.
and if you're appreciative of those who help you, then you're positively reinforcing the behavior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
So
go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say I know that a question I get a lot of the time is, okay, that's great. They're nodding in agreement, and they say yes, it's a really good idea to have good character, constantly kind of be on the lookout for how you can help other people and join community and bring people into your community. But how do I get started if I've already done that and I only know 20 people? Where are places I can go to build and add to my network and my community?
Well, absolutely, you want to start with LinkedIn to
Mm-hmm.
build that community. I tell you what was surprising when I first used LinkedIn. I think it was 2008 when I first had my profile.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it might have been 2008, but I believe it was 2008. Is that all these people somehow came out of the woodwork? I
Uh-huh.
mean, that first probably week or so, there were more than 100 people I was connected to. And the more people I
Wow.
tend to friend, the more people that LinkedIn began to find. And
Right.
that's what made it so easy. You can be connected
Yeah.
to a couple of hundred people very, very quickly, even
Like that.
if it's
Mm-hmm.
just like 20 people, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you connect to that one person from high school
Mm-hmm.
or
Right.
or to that fraternity and brother in college, or fraternity sister, sorority
Mm-hmm.
sister in
Mm-hmm.
college.
Mm-hmm.
Those often lead to many, many other connections as well. And then
That's
when
true.
people see your activity, they're like, "Oh, it's him or it's her. Let me connect with
Yeah.
them." So, there's
Yes.
so many ways you can. There are people who are what they call lions, which are open networkers, LinkedIn open networkers, lion, Lion.
Uh-huh. Okay.
They connect with everybody. It's rare if one of them even turn them down. So you could connect with those people first. No telling who they're connected with. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many ways you could do, but that's the best place to start. Start with your family, friends, and who you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then go to LinkedIn, and uh, in the next day or two, you can possibly have a couple of hundred
That's
people
true.
that you're connected to that you've forgotten about.
Right. Right. That's right. That's a really good point. I love that. And I remember early on, because that's how I found this connection.
Hmm.
Early on, I don't think they do this anymore, but you're in the top 5% of, connected people or active people on LinkedIn or something like that.
Right.
And I saw one of my colleagues put that in his summary, and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't think. Oh, it's nice, but I don't think that's going to help you in the long run.
Right.
But it can be very, very helpful. And you mentioned something to me I wanted to ask you a little bit more about was groups. What's a smart way to use groups on LinkedIn?
Now we're getting into the next tier of connections you could possibly build. So, LinkedIn allows you to join up to 50 groups. Some of these groups are open. You could just join right on in. Some of them are closed. You have to, apply. The moderator will approve you if they like you. It helps to have a photo, of course. It helps to have your profile completed so that when people go look to see who you are, they have a really good sense and be able to invite you on in. And
Right.
within those groups, you can always. There used to be they changed the dynamic a recent year or so to where you used to be able to in-mail or connect much easier to somebody that's within the group. Um, but now you can't do that as much, and I forgot how because I haven't been as
Oh.
active on groups as I used to be in the past few months.
Mm-hmm.
But that dynamic has changed. But that doesn't mean you still can't be seen if you join the right groups within your industry. If you join the right groups within your industry, you're gonna automatically be able to connect with those people eventually, even if you comment or like. People will be much more
Right.
receptive because it's a much more intimate environment for that kind of thing.
Right. That's a really good point. And something that I've noticed on LinkedIn using the groups is, well, like you said, it's important to have your profile with your picture and all of that in place. Your picture, by the way, and in my opinion, I'm curious about yours, is it needs to be good. It doesn't need to be a $500 headshot, but it needs
Right.
to be good. It needs to be not a picture of you with somebody's arm over your shoulder and a
Right.
drink.
A crop
Probably not a
a
good
crop
idea.
party picture is not a great idea at all.
I mean, a selfie that's good is better than one of those.
Right.
Um, but using commenting on the groups and starting a discussion string or commenting on somebody else's, actually, I prefer that. I see that if you comment and say good things about what somebody else says, then their heart is warmed up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you can connect with people you share a group with.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do that if you don't know them, but that is an opportunity to get to know people who are maybe in positions of authority that you want to get to know, but you wouldn't have access to them otherwise. So I think that's an amazing strength that you can connect with people, especially since, like you said, you can join up to 50 groups. That's a lot, and you can change, can't you? You can
Yeah.
quit a group if your career sort of takes a different direction, and you no longer need to worry about social media as much as you need to talk about digital marketing. You can shift your mix.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that people uh, tend to not completely understand, the more you participate, the more it raises your profile, you
Right.
raise your visibility, which
Right.
again, it adds to the equity of being able to get a referral.
Mm-hmm.
And when people see you, you need to comment.
Mm-hmm.
You need to
Yeah.
do more than just like or just share and say nothing about the article that you're sharing. I mean, that will get you some visibility, but I've seen people do it for years and you know, the visibility, you
Uh-huh.
don't know who they are really still. And
Mm-hmm.
people are going
Mm-hmm.
to refer you if they have a good feeling about who you
Right.
are. So
Right.
that's where the commenting is. If you're bold enough, blog on the LinkedIn platform. That's the ultimate. That's the gold standard in my opinion, and I know it is in yours as well. Those things that will lend to the conversation at large is going to make a big difference in the way that you raise your profile and get people to warm up to you.
Right. That's a really good point. The blogging is a relatively new addition to the LinkedIn platform, and a
Right.
really strong one. You're right. I've noticed that with any of the social media platforms, when they introduce a new way to communicate with the audience,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is, they give preferential treatment to activity on the new methods. So for example, with Facebook Live, if you put live video out there, that makes it to the top of the stream, and your
Mm-hmm.
other posts may not, because they want to encourage use of the new part of the platform. It's the same thing with blogging on LinkedIn, and there's no problem with taking a blog post that you put on your own blog, copying it, pasting it, and putting it on the LinkedIn blog. I mean, it's fine. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
great about blogging, is that, and just content in general, is it doesn't have to be completely unique to that audience. You can use the same content back and forth, because the fact of the matter is there's so much coming at us all the time. What's the worst that happens? You saw it twice. That's a good thing. That
Right.
happens.
Exactly. Well, you're going to see a good thing, especially if you put something out there. Let's say you just do an update. You do an
Yep.
update, you write a little summary, maybe
Mm-hmm.
160 characters, and you link an article, and then your thought and the article about the thought is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to me, it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
where people like it or not. If you're in the midst of like-minded people in your network, they're more than likely going to like it or comment on it. But as people
Right.
like it and they comment on it, it gets shared automatically. It goes through their
Right.
LinkedIn feed, and
Right.
again increases your likability and your visibility ultimately as
Right.
somebody
Right.
as is saying, wow, he has some thoughts of it. I don't want to put the
Right.
label thought leader because it has all types of connotations it doesn't need to have, but ultimately it is sort of saying that you have an original thought, and that's what people want to hire. That's who people will refer, is somebody that
Yeah.
has who independently thinks and can demonstrate that without a problem.
Right. Right. You're so right about that. That's a really good point. And that made me think of a question. I'm trying to figure out if I can find it. It was rolling around in my head. Let's
Okay.
see. Do you see the speech bubble up there? Can you
Yeah,
identify for me?
not quite. It's by the X. It's behind the X.
Let me scoot down, see if you can see it.
Okay. All right.
Um, LinkedIn comments, um, blogging, sharing. Oh, I know. I was going to ask you about profile.
Okay.
Um, Lately, I've seen, and then Hannah mentioned this when we did a blab together a couple of weeks ago, that using SlideShare, uploading videos,
Mm-hmm.
uploading samples of
Yes.
work, that those are, you can do that on LinkedIn, whereas you cannot do that with a two-page resume.
Right.
With a resume, you can't even include a picture, which is good and bad.
Right.
It's good because, you know, your name is all they have to go on. So, they can't decide, well, I don't like people with blonde hair, I'm not going to interview you.
Right.
But on the other hand, they don't know whether you're presentable or not. And that is a factor sometimes, especially it depends on the job. If you're going to be
Right.
customer facing, they kind of want
Right.
to know, do you know how to put yourself together? Um, but with LinkedIn, it's so many more dimensions. You can have the picture, you can have samples of your work, you can have the blog posts that you do on LinkedIn. They can see how you comment and what kind of thoughts do you have
Mm-hmm.
around different issues. I love that you can put SlideShare on there. You can upload videos. Like, we can upload this video to both of our LinkedIn profiles. That's one of
Yes.
the options. It's a way to add more layers into what the employers and everybody else who's on LinkedIn can see about who we are. More
Yeah.
opportunities and areas to connect.
Yep. And I can go another mile or two about raising visibility through your profile, and it could be very subtle. And I think
Mm-hmm.
ultimately bringing in the point that the more you're visible, the more people will warm up to you. And that's,
That's true.
some of it's not necessarily a numbers game. And then again, some of it is, because if, the more people, the more likely that even somebody who doesn't know you might be interested in you because of what you share. I've seen people
Right.
who, I have a friend of mine that actually, he's, he went full in with blogging, LinkedIn, and all that. He had his old boss connect with him because they said, "Oh, now I see that you're an expert in the field." So, so his old boss is following him now, and
That's awesome.
and that's awesome. But that's the power of it is that because the
It
more
is.
you do, the more visibility you have. And there's really no excuse to complain about, well, I'm really, afraid and I don't want to be rejected. And that's real. I shouldn't say it like that. That is not, it's not a hardcore, it's not always black and white in that kind of way. But at the same time, you can make some headway a whole lot quicker than if you didn't do any of that at all. And so the
Excellent
more
point.
people are again seeing your work, seeing who you are, and LinkedIn is not Facebook. So there's nothing to get real personal. However, if
Right.
you do so show some personality, there is the likability factor that we talked about a
Right.
little bit earlier.
Right.
So
Right.
again, you want to warm up as much as you possibly can so that you're recognizable, your skills are recognizable, and that people feel comfortable enough. So if you should ask, or if they have a need to find someone, they could just reach out to you. And you don't even have to
Right.
ask. The referral's right
Right.
there because you're visible.
Right. Right. Well, that's how I met you.
Yeah.
You were visible and active on Blab, and I saw that you were visible and active, and I went and looked at samples of interviews and work that you did that was visible to me, and I was impressed, and so we connected. And that is a way. If you had been visible and not smart and not thoughtful and a poor communicator, then I would have thought visible, but I'll move on to the next one. So it's an example of what you're talking about.
But you bring up a great point. You know, you are who you put out there.
It's
And
true.
I mean, people don't have any other point of reference. So they can't say, well,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of blew it here. Because more than likely, if people will give you two or three shots. But if you're consistently inadequate
Underwhelming.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or underperforming, uh,
Yeah.
that they'll move on to somebody who meets their expectations. So it's kind of hard. You are putting yourself out there. Again, the idea of
Right.
having the courage of being
Yeah.
able to do it, being persistent, having the
Mm-hmm.
patience, that's really, really important. Um,
Yeah.
Persevering through some of the times when you may not hear from anybody at all, or the fact that you've asked somebody to refer you and they never gave you an answer, which is to me that's one of the worst feelings of your life. Is they don't answer that and say, well, you should go over here. Sometimes you just can't take those kind of things personally. You just
Right.
can't.
That's right. That's
But you
right.
got to be able to move on. But
Yep.
there's some resilience that go along with it too.
Absolutely.
You've got to weather the storm. But once you
Right.
get it all together, then there'll be some things that opportunities you come that you won't even see. Eventually, it doesn't happen to everybody. I don't want to make it seem like it's the golden calf here.
Right. Right.
It takes work.
It does take
It
work.
takes
Yeah.
time, but
Uh huh.
with the right mixture can get you somewhere.
Yeah. That's right. As we're talking, and as you're talking about courage and persistence and perseverance, those are um, three hallmarks of character as I see it.
Hmm.
And maybe it's partly because they've paid off really nicely for me. The problem is they're not necessarily instant. They might be, but typically they're not. And so the challenge is keeping yourself going when you feel tired and worn down. And it can be hard if you get a lot of rejection or you put a lot of effort out there and you don't get anything positive back. That can be hard. I went through that myself in 2009 and 10.
Hmm.
Boy, it was tough back then
Yeah.
in the market. And what I did was I surrounded myself with friends who were encouraging, and I didn't talk to anybody who was negative.
Right.
That just didn't help me.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how I had to find ways to keep myself fed and and going. And then giving back is another thing that's helpful when you start to feel discouraged. I find if you give back to others, then that is two things. That makes you feel better about yourself. That helps somebody else. And three things: takes your mind off of whatever's bothering you. But as we were talking about that, I was thinking about how that persistence and courage can pay off in the form of you can discover people who can become part of your network, your referral network, in unexpected places if you have your mind open to where those opportunities might be. And I wondered what were some of the examples of that you've run into where you found people to add to your referral network that you didn't expect to find them there. Was it at a gas station or?
That's a very interesting question. Let me tell you a story that
Okay.
still that resonates with me from a few years ago. I had a client that always complained about somebody that she worked with. They didn't like each other, but in kind of an odd way, they respected each other's work. And it was something to do with one cheating with the other spouse, and I mean,
Oh
it was
dear.
like
Oh my gosh.
the worst circumstance. But here's what interesting thing happened: being that they didn't like each other anyway, the one left the company and went to another company where she got higher pay and a higher grade. So she heard about this position that the person she didn't like. She heard about this. Now, you would think that, oh, they'll never speak to each other again. Not the case at all. Because she respected this person's work, she sent her a message saying, there's this position, it's a higher grade, it's comparable to what you're doing, you should apply. She did. They still don't like each other, but they worked with each other with two companies.
Wow,
is
that's
that
crazy.
is that incredulous or what? I mean,
That's incredulous. So when you think, where are you going to find your the person who's going to refer an opportunity to you? You probably don't think the person who is your nemesis.
yep.
You probably don't think the person who is maybe cheating on you, cheating with your spouse. That's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
But kudos to them for making lemonade out of that big old giant lemon.
And they had
because
and what's funny is that they ended up in the same situation and they worked the same. They didn't necessarily have to see each other. They didn't have
yeah,
to. They didn't need necessarily
yeah,
walk into each other in the hallway, but they
right.
respected each other's work. They said nobody else can do this but her, and they felt the same way about the both of them. So,
Interesting.
it was interesting. I don't know what the dynamic happened if how one thanked the other for the job. I imagine she did. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to
Yeah, yeah.
describe.
It was
So when
probably
I tell
awkward,
people
but
that
yeah.
story, they're like, no way. I'm going, yeah, yeah, it really
Yes way.
happened.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's kind of the one thing that, people are familiar with you sometimes whether they
Right.
like you or not.
That's right. So if there's professional respect, even if they hate your guts, there can still be goodness that comes
Yes,
out of it.
it
That's
was
a
the
really
work.
good point.
It
So
was the
your
work that
network
stood
doesn't
out.
have to be made up of only your best friends.
That,
That's the point that
there,
I hear you
there you
making.
go. There you
I've
go.
got an example that made me think of. So recently, when I was hiring a marketing person, I was looking for somebody with 1 or 2 years experience. So
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of resumes, a lot of resumes. I'm in Austin, Texas. We have University of Austin, of Texas here at Austin and St. Ed's.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of graduates. There's a lot of young people. So I had, a big old stack. But when you have a big old stack you're looking for reasons to weed them out because it's stressful. You're doing somebody else's job while you're looking to hire the position in addition to your own job, and it's exhausting. So I found there was a candidate that we really liked. We brought her in, we interviewed her, we were impressed with her. She was poised, she had a year experience. We offered her the job. She didn't take it because we were offering low pay,
Mm-hmm.
which I couldn't do anything about that. It was what it was. But she moved on. She didn't take that job, and we hired somebody else who ended up being a great fit as well. The point I'm making is that later, when somebody I knew, a a personal contact, reached out to me and said, I'm looking for somebody who looks like this, 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 and this. I said, I know this candidate. We tried to hire her. We couldn't afford her, but that job sounds like it might be a better fit.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, I'll introduce you. And she began working for them, and that has worked out beautifully. So she impressed me, did the follow-up, did the thank you, nice to meet you, did all of those things. That impressed me, and she would have thought that was the end of it. But it ended up, she made a good impression, and I was in a position to refer her to somebody else, and it worked out. And that made me look good to the guy she's working for as well.
Right.
You know.
Right. Well, what's
you never know.
Yeah. Well, what's remarkable is, and I was when I was a floor manager for a call center, the turnover rate wasn't extremely high, but it was higher than most of the other part of the organization. And one of the things that often happen is when people got referred, their resume became a second consideration as far as the quality of it. We hired some people with some lousy resumes, be frank, and every day people are being hired with lousy resumes. But what they had that stood above the resume was that they had somebody that would vouch for them and somebody that referred them. And so the resume became the secondary part, even with typos. And there was a rule that people who were, had typos and grammar errors, they were disqualified automatically. But because they were referred by somebody within the organization, that was an automatic interview as far as the organization was concerned.
Right.
Even as the first line supervisor, having to say, hey, I thought we had this rule. Say, yeah, but they're a friend of so and so, and that's good employee relations. So therefore, we need to at least see them, even if you don't hire them.
Right.
So I think people go through things that they don't have to very often when there's an answer to it. And these days, with the savvy, if you're at least a halfway savvy user with LinkedIn or even with Twitter or Facebook or some of the other networks that are out there, they become tools at that particular point for you to make your way into people's hearts as far as your career is concerned.
Right. That's right. That's so true. And what's interesting about this in the process of not only who do you know that you can connect to on LinkedIn, and I'm agreeing with you. I think that's the best place to aggregate your connections and then branch out from there on the other channels. And Facebook has been coming on strong as an option as well. But what organizations do you volunteer with? And so when I meet people now, even when it is in a not specifically professional interaction, if I like them, and I don't connect to absolutely everybody who wants to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Right.
I am a little bit careful. I want to know a little bit of something about them,
sure,
which is the premise of everything we're talking about right now.
Right.
So when I meet people through even stuff I do volunteer or through parents or other interactions that I have, if I like them, then I look to connect with them online as well, because that's just good network building. You just never know.
Sure.
So you don't have to have a specific reason. This is part of the thinking big, thinking globally, thinking how can I build my community, long range view things. So back to kind of how do you go find some more people to connect with? Volunteering can be a really good way to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I that's right. And as a matter of fact, I had an example of a client of mine who was looking to get in at a specific company. She had no warm contacts. And so we were looking for a way to get some. She couldn't find any through LinkedIn. She couldn't find any through any other means. I said, look at their website and find out what they do for corporate sustainability, for their give back campaigns. And she found out what it was. And I said, why don't you go see about volunteering for that organization? See if you run into some of the people who work at that company in doing some volunteer work that's on task with what that particular organization cares about. And that worked for her.
Hmm.
She was able to meet a couple of people. Again, not from the same department, but it's a start. It's a warm entry into the company.
Sure.
It's a reason to set yourself apart. So,
Sure, sure. Yeah, those things count. I mean, there's nothing really out of bounds outside of being rude and being honorary. I mean,
yeah, right.
yeah, I
Don't do
mean,
that.
yeah. Not saying you need to do that, but I think ultimately, again, visibility, likability,
Mhm.
increases your chances of
It's so
people
true.
to pass you on to the next step at least.
I so agree with that. And that's making me think of the next question I want to ask you, which
Mm-hmm.
is, so let's say somebody is watching this and they're nodding enthusiastically and saying, yes, so I'm doing all those things and I'm going to keep doing those things. I am being visible, I am being likable, and yet I feel a little self conscious about asking for people to give me a referral. So, for example, and I hear this a lot, I feel self conscious about doing it. I feel low confidence about it. I don't want to be a pest. What can we, how can we counsel people who know that that's the thing they need to do, but they feel really self conscious? They feel a lot of resistance to reaching out and asking for the referral.
First thing I would say is don't concentrate on the ask. Concentrate
Mm-hmm.
on a value exchange or an opportunity to give value. When you do
I
those
love that.
things, that ultimately warms up people to you because people love to
That's
be
true.
given to. People love the
They do.
question. People love the question. So how did you get into that? Watch somebody talk
Mm-hmm.
for hours on end at times. And
Yeah.
and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that if
There's
that
nothing.
will
Yeah.
be the way to connect with people. But I think people
Mm-hmm.
concentrate again, they think it's all in the ask and it's really all in what you give and all in
That's
what you
so true.
add. So,
Right.
again, concentrate on how you can give. I mean, people are looking to, are probably just as scared as you are. And
Mm-hmm.
people know of opportunities that you don't. That's probably the biggest difference. But there
Yeah.
might be things that that people don't know.
Right.
So
Right.
don't be afraid of having just a conversation. Say, hey, I want to get your opinion on how do you feel about this thing in
Right.
our industry, or how do you feel
Right.
this trends, or how are you guys performing this? It
Right.
has nothing to do with getting or giving anything. You're asking somebody's
Right.
opinion. Most of us love to share our opinion.
Right. That's right. Exactly. I think that that's a really good point, and people do enjoy talking about themselves, and that's fine. It's a human being thing. So sharing a curiosity and interest in the other person is a great way to make it warmer. And I love the idea of a value exchange as opposed to gimme, gimme, gimme. Because
Hmm.
if your approach is gimme, 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 none of this is going to work for you.
Yeah, right,
The long run.
right, right.
So I agree. I mean, and I feel like I also want to add in my own experience, sometimes I need to just push through. I just need to know I feel uncomfortable with that. That's the next thing I want to do. That isn't easy. That I have maybe some qualms about it. But if I just go, yep, feel uncomfortable about doing it, know it's the right thing, going to go do it anyway.
Yeah,
That ends up paying off as opposed to I need to wait until I feel totally comfortable about it because you might not.
right.
But if you approach it the right way with the how can we exchange value, then nothing bad is going to happen.
Yep. Well, I think too, we can get into semantics. There's a value exchange that's involved, but I think more than likely people's mindset, if you know that you might be the needier of the two, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
give a whole lot more than you're going to get back. And you do take
Mm.
that as a risk as to possibly not getting back what you want. But
Mm.
I would say majority of the time, if you give and it's something that person really needs, that one thing is likely to come back. I can
Right.
honestly say that. But again, if your total focus is on the wrong thing, then of course you're likely to be set up for disappointment. So
Right.
it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you at least a little bit. But
Right.
just think, is the return on investment worth your value?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
I think,
It's so true.
but
Yeah.
it's work.
Yeah. It is work. There's no way to circumvent and take the easy way out. So that's maybe if there's bad news, that's the bad news. But the good news is that you can lay groundwork always, and you never
Yes.
know when it'll pay off for you. But you can always be nurturing relationships and giving back and adding value and being an awesome person, and
Yeah.
that pays off. And you know what? The reverse is also true.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have examples of you put bad karma out there, and that will bite you. It will, and I've seen that happen as well.
Yeah.
And and fortunately or unfortunately, that can be satisfying
Mhm.
to those of us who have experienced somebody with poor character,
Yeah.
to see them not get the reference. I've seen that happen. I've seen people who work together not get the referral because they behave so badly
Hmm.
to other people, and even if it wasn't to that person, the example of their conduct and their character was so bad that when it came time for somebody they'd worked with, a colleague of theirs, to refer them to a new position, they wouldn't do it because
Yeah.
they weren't comfortable with who this person was, which just underscores the importance of being a genuinely likable, respectful, cool, awesome person.
Well, they were disruptive in the wrong way.
Right, exactly,
we talked
exactly.
we talked
Disruptive
about
in the wrong way.
earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah, we talked earlier about what disruption is positively, as far
yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
intercepting what people are expecting and what they're thinking, and they
Mm-hmm.
did it the wrong way. Is that they're
Right,
disrupting, and it's causing, sometimes it's a cost of money when you're
right.
disruptive in the wrong way.
Yeah. So I love that. You came full circle right at about the time I was thinking we needed to wrap up. And that is coming back to finding a way to be disruptive, finding a way to also connect with people, a way to in an ongoing way, nurture relationships as you
Hmm.
encounter them. They can be in unexpected places, like they can be your personal arch nemesis, but a professional respect is there, and that can pay off. They
Right.
can be people you encounter um, through Girl Scouts for your daughter, like was in the case with me, or a basketball team with your son. That's another way I got a job, was talking to another mom, and turned out that that was she, and she was an accountant and I was in marketing, so I never thought that she would lead to a job opening for me. But if
Right.
she'd been doing the job I wanted at the company where I ended up working, then that opening wouldn't have been there. So you
Hmm.
just never know. Being open and being curious. I love being courageous, persistent, and persevering. Those are really good pieces of advice.
If I can add, that's actually part of the elements that I talk about, and I actually wrote a blog post about. I call it CPR for your career. Is
Love it.
is courage, patience, perseverance,
Yeah.
persistence, and resilience. CPR. And
Oh, CPR. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I like it.
and those elements are something that you already own.
Right.
Those are things that people can't give you. They can't train for you to have it. You've already gone through those things that have gotten. If you're able to access it and put in your
Right.
energy towards your job search, you'll be
Yes.
much better for it.
That's really good. Well, will you type in the link to
Sure,
um,
sure.
that blog post?
Yep.
I think that would be great. I'd love to
Okay.
see that. Um, I've got a post on my blog as well, actually about LinkedIn. There's a couple on there about LinkedIn, and mine is margotwickersham.com/blog.
Okay.
And there's some goodies there. I think that I love today. This was a lot of fun, and I think you
Yes.
revealed a lot of goodness that a lot of people will be able to use when they're out there job searching and looking to expand their referral network. I
Good.
think one of the best take homes is you don't need to have been the CEO of a company to have. It's not limited to the good old boy network or an
Hmm.
industry network or the boardroom or the golf course. It's so much more open now, even if you're none of those things, and even if you don't have the time or the money to go participate in any of those old school in the know people, there's all these tools that are available now. It completely democratizes all of it, which I love.
Right.
And using social media as tools to go about the business of expanding your network, it's access to everybody.
Right.
There's
That's true.
no one's denied. It's free to have a LinkedIn membership. So
That's right.
I love all that. I think this is great, and I hope that you will join me again. I'd love to do another
Oh,
broadcast with you.
great, great. Anytime you like.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, and I
Sure.
look forward to staying in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. This was fantastic, and you had to train. You had to. I'm sorry, you had to trade me for Hannah. So,
I think it's worked out great. The way I look at it is now I have Hannah and Mark, so that's good.
well, I'm glad you feel that way. That's great. But I love Hannah. Hannah's a
She's
great
great.
friend
Yeah.
and very, very knowledgeable. And she's been in the game a whole lot longer than I have, and have so much more experience than I have. So I really look up to her as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, have a wonderful rest of the day, and let's do this again soon.
Great. Well, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.